short pepper session is Nadeem Haque from Canada.
Thank you. So I'm going to present this, the Quranic paradigm for global sustainability. It's based on a book that I recently co-authored. It's called Equilibrium, this one. And it's essentially, this could be the first book on the environment and Islam I've actually published in the Muslim world. And, from a comprehensive perspective based on the Quran, which is the source of Islam. So I'm going to outline what I can in 10 minutes as far as the whole system goes, as to how the Quran deals with the environment and animals and human development for global sustainability. So when you look at the Quran, which is supposed to be a revelation from God, it has many you could say connections, logical connections. So when I did research over the couple of decades for this book, I was able to extract or discover some laws within from the Quran. So it's like if you have mechanics, you have the 3 laws of Newton, and they can explain the whole of mechanics. So similarly, this system, which I discovered in the Quran, I was able to extract 4 laws from the Quran, and they can be used to optimize society towards global sustainability. And a lot of the I had to develop new terminology too. So I think there are 9. There are 9 new terminologies that I developed to explain this, because it's not really captured. A lot of some of it can be captured in the English language. So let's dig into it. So I call those 4 laws, which I was able to extract from the Quran, ecognitions from ecological recognitions. So what are those ecognitions which will lead to global sustainability? Okay, so I'm basically saying global sustainability equals implementing ecognition 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first one is what I think we have been discussing here, among the Christians and the Jews. They understand this, and the Muslims, they understand this concept. It is that all creation is a trust from God. So it says in the Quran, and unto God belongs the dominion of the heavens. That's all the galaxies. When it says heavens here, it means galaxies, and the earth, and God has the power over all things. Humankind is only given temporary stewardship, and the word is khilafa of the natural world. Therefore, humankind is responsible and accountable for any of the abuses of the earth's life forms or natural resources. If nothing belongs to us and is a trust, then we are accountable as trustees to the owner in all humility. And in the Quran, in this Surah 33, verse 72, it says that God offered the trust to the mountains and the galaxies, and they were cautious, but human being accepted it, but he is foolish and unjust. Okay, so this one is kind of known, I think, to all the so-called Abrahamic faiths. Okay, now the next one is very crucial, and it's very you could say the Quran uniquely focuses on this. It has to do with the balance of nature, and so there are a lot of verses about the balance of nature. So it says, for example, in the Quran it says, "We have surely sent messengers with clear evidences and sent with the book," that's the Quran, "and the balance, so that human beings may behave with equity." The mistake that a lot of the Muslim thinkers of the centuries made is that they thought that the balance is equal to the book, which is the Quran, but that's not what the verse is saying. It's saying there's nature, there's balance in nature, and there's the book. So then there's a verse which is very interesting. If you expand an Arabic word, this is what it means actually. God has appointed, precisely established, and positioned the earth. Okay, that means both the earth as planet as a whole and the crust itself for the maintenance and development of sentient life forms. So this is like the Goldilocks zone, which they're looking at when they're observing, trying to figure out the life on other planets. So this ecognition too, it's been made so to test human beings to see which human beings would maintain the balance. So that's the whole idea for creating the universe and the balance. Okay. Now the balance. There's a long story behind this. I call it the echogenic principle, where genic is start of origin and equi is balance. Because many years ago, the whole thing started out this way, that at the York University, my colleague, he was challenged and said, the professor, he was an agnostic, and he said that rights are not absolute, they're synthetic, they're man-made. And then we knew that this didn't make sense from an Islamic point of view, and then I came up with this kind of idea that when you look at nature, and if you upset nature, you cause a cascading negative effect. And so you have to, you have to do the opposite. You have to maintain it. But when you do that, like, it's inherent in nature. It's not something that we invent. And we used an example of a case in Australia where this person had a jacket made of snakeskin, and then he was an actor, and then everybody wanted that. They killed all the snakes. The rat population went up. The rats ate all the crops, and there was starvation. So we said that it is the inherent right of the snake. It's not. It's an echogenic right. So I developed this idea of an echogenic right. So the echogenic right is, here I just explain what that is, right? It has to do with, the biosphere, ecology, human body, everything, like how is the balance maintained. A lot of actually ecologists who are do not want to believe in God say, for example, that, there's no balance, because balance implies teleology. But that is, of course, ridiculous, right? Because then they say, well, for example, in a particular place, there were some environmental, ecological issues, problems. What they're saying is that there was an imbalance, actually. So you cannot escape it, okay? So then the other thing is that animals, they know their purpose and their role in nature, and they maintain the balance. So they're part of the echogenic principle, okay? But the human being is the one that actually is the one that can disrupt the flow. And I call it the echogenic flow, this flow of the balance. So the human being in the Quran, and plus there are other entities that are non-carbon based, and they're called the jinn, that they exist. And the Quran, is talking about us being created from water, so we're carbon based. So these two entities have the potential to disrupt the balance of nature. So the echogenic rights based in the origin of the equilibrium in nature, okay, like right from the Big Bang, you had that. Then the origin of rights is based in the equilibrium in nature, right? And rights are projected onto us if we observe things in a rational way and make the interconnections. So all policies should be based on this. So the Quran is really into using nature, because in 1,300 years ago, the Quran made people think, and inductive knowledge rose, experimentalism. So it told you how to use nature, but also the nature of use. And we have forgotten, we are only using nature, but not thinking of the nature of use. And the best technology, like nature of technology, is the technology of nature. Because, you see, God is the best creator. It says in the Quran that He's the best creator, which means there are other creators too, like human beings, but God is the best creator. And you're supposed to use technology in a cyclical way and all that, which we now know more about, right? Okay. So basically the Quranic idea is, if you use your reason and your cognizant, then you'll notice design in nature, and then you'll put things where they belong, and it'll lead to the balance, mizan. And if when that happens, it leads to justice, and that leads to peace. So in Islam, the word Islam actually means peace. That's one of the meanings. Okay, I'll skip to the third ecognition quickly. All right. So the third ecognition is that all animals are in communities, like your community. That's what the Quranic verse says. And then the fourth ecognition has to do with, this was the book that I mentioned. The fourth ecognition has to do with personhood, the idea of personhood. Okay, I think I mentioned that here somewhere. Okay, personhood. Yeah, that every single animal is an individual. Like even you won't find two ants that have the same personality. But so the individual rights of all creatures is very important, which leads to a community structure, right, which is balanced. Because this balance in nature is happening because animals are in the community. So if you destroy the animal communities, you destroy the balance, right? The balance is the ecognition 2. So if you destroy ecognition 3, you destroy ecognition 2. But in order to have strong ecognition 3, which is animals and communities, the individual animals and sentient entities have to have the rights. So all these ecognitions are interrelated in that way. So and you need that to have global sustainability. You know, here we're just talking about how, you know, the wide disparity between, you know, human beings right now. Just put that in there. I'm just going through it very fast. So, you know, when you bring in the economics, then I was thinking of another way of using coming up with economics that has different measures based on the echogenic principle. So that then the equation would be health of society is 1 minus the socio-environmental deficit. Okay, so let's say if the socio-environmental deficit is 0, then health of society would be 1 or 100%. If a society's socio-environmental deficit is 0.5, then it would be 50%. The socio-environmental deficit is equal to the amount of deviation from the echogenic principle, basically. Okay. So there's one word in Arabic, the word is Rabb. It means the creator and sustainer of your consciousness, where our consciousness comes from, and it also means evolver, the one who evolves, right? So what is basically happening is that, I'll jump onto this, is that the Quran talks of directed evolution, like it's not against evolution, but it's created by God. And the other thing is that all our consciousness comes from the creator. So it means that all animals and everything, we're interconnected. When you have this concept of interconnectivity using these two, then you have affinity. And when you have affinity, you have empathy, and then compassion, and then justice, right? And if you have justice, you have peace. So, me being an engineer, that's my background. I've always, thought in terms of structures and, like that. I thought of like capturing this in terms of an analogy. So, in order to have global sustainability, you need to have the 4 integrated ecognitions. And if you don't have them, the 4 which you talked about, right? Trust in God, the balance or the echogenic principle, communities' rights for all communities, and individual rights that uphold all these, the echogenic principle, that upholds the echogenic principle. Then if you don't have this, you don't have the flow. And you don't have this idea of taqwa. Taqwa means consciousness of the sustainer. And if you don't have that, then you cannot have global sustainability. So basically, if society wants to get to this, become globally sustainable, it has to then have those 4 laws which I extracted from the Quran. It's not a matter of whether we should have it or not. Like the Quran is saying that is how the system actually works. And so I've gone through it really fast, but this is basically the Quranic approach to the environment. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. This is absolutely critical material for the Islamic world right now. There's so many severe crises occurring ecologically. In Syria, there was a very lush area, very fertile area. It's now a desert. Turkey has dammed up the Euphrates. Ethiopia is damming the Nile, a portion of the Nile. And there's a significant overgrazing of goats and sheep that's turning the land into like wasteland, like a desert.
Yeah.
So I think you've really hit on all the points that could reverse. Well, I don't know if it can be reversed now, it may be too late. But at least make the Islamic world aware of the Quranic mandates to preserve nature.
Yeah. So this is I think this whole process began in the early 80s in terms of educating the Muslims, because Compassion in World Farming approached my grandfather, who was the Imam of Woking Mosque, Shah Jahan Mosque, and they said that there's a lot of problems in the Muslim world concerning animals. Would you like to work on that? And then he ended up with a book called Animals in Islam. In 1985, I thought we should write a book on Islam and the environment, and then in 1989 he agreed, and I collected a lot of hadith, like lots of hadith for him. And he wrote about that till 1992, but he passed away. So I continued doing research, for decades, and then ended up with this book. But if you go online now, you'll see a lot about animals and Islam and all that. And that was really because of his work. So it spread all over the internet, and a lot of Muslims are aware. But there has not been a book on the environment, this is the first one, and I think that some Muslims have approached me, a lot of them, and they want to interview me. It's just dialogue, right? Like, I'm here at ESSAT, and I've been the only Muslim presenter for the last, two, other ones, right? So it's just a matter of exchanging ideas, and as you can see, a lot of these ideas are, compatible with, Judaism and Christianity. It's just that. The Quran is very precise, though. It's extremely precise. So I think that's the advantage with the Quran. But the concepts are essentially the same. And you see, Islam brings in the interconnectivity, but at the same time, it says that there is only one God. So it has that, the Abrahamic part, but it has the other part. Like it's a mixture, right? In that sense. So.
Yeah. Well, I applaud your book. For making the Islamic world aware of what the Quran is mandating.
And I think actually I must congratulate ESSAT for having invited me, I think, in 2016, because it made me think. Like, so the topic was the uniqueness of the human being. That was in 2016. So it really made me think. And I haven't had a chance to discuss all this. We don't have time, but the Muslims were under the wrong impression that they are it's called Ashraf al-Makhluk, that they're the best among creation, but that's not the Quranic concept. It doesn't exist. This concept does not exist. I discovered was that it has to do with the human being. What makes a human being unique, right? Because animals communicate. The Quran talks about animal communication. The Quran talks about animals having revelation, wahi. But human beings have revelation. So what makes a human being unique? So I went through everything. I said animals have this. We have. It is because we are the only ones who can mess up the balance. So that's why the Quran is so focused on the balance. And the Quran is a very amazing book. The main verse on the balance is actually Surah in chapter 57, which is right in the middle, because there are 114 chapters, and the one about balance is right in the middle. So it has many mathematical features, but yeah, so that's. Try and get this message out to the Muslims more. Any other? Yeah.
Yesterday, Chris Ives spoke about leverage points for change, and when you present your model, what is your vision of whom would you address? The individual or the community? The Muslim world is a big term.
Yeah.
So could you say a bit about a central concept, as I understand in Islam, is the Ummah, so the community, and could you explain a little more how you see the relation between the individual and the community, and to which part is your system addressed? To whom is your system addressed?
The thing is that if I actually go to the Quran and you talk about the way the Quran deals with things, then it is really going behind names. So whoever really is interested and believes in God, or has this concept of God, or maybe is on the fence, the Muslims are told to approach those people and tell them, that this is the message, that there is a creator. So it's not. I don't look upon it as Muslim or non-Muslim, actually, although most Muslims would look upon it like that way. I've been involved in many very interesting projects of the past. For example, the Quran talks about embryology, and the Muslim scholars didn't understand it, so they approached Keith Moore, Dean of Basic Sciences, and then he explained those things. He's a non-Muslim. And then, then they were saying, I said to the organization in Canada, why don't we have another lecture with Keith Moore? And they said, yeah, he talks about the Quran, but he's not a Muslim. I said, so what? He's actually helped the Muslims understand, because he was an expert. He died a few years ago. He was in Canada. It doesn't make sense, right? Like, so whoever is really interested, we have to approach that. And Marshall Johnson, he was another person that we invited for a lecture. He was a pioneer of test tube babies. He said to me that you Muslims are not doing enough to let people know about the things in the Quran, because what is in the Quran is quite amazing, right? About embryology and like stuff like that. So, and he said he's very intrigued about verses on clay, which then made me think about clay, because then I discovered that the Quran is actually talking about evolution through clay. Because monomarine clay is the only clay through which you can get nucleotides. So what the scriptures, the Quran is saying is that there's evolution that has happened through RNA, DNA, through the clay aspect, which, like, this opens up, I've talked to people who do extraterrestrial, research on Earth-like planets, because it's opening up another area, right? Because it means that you need rocky planets for life, because, you get clay from rocks, right? Like, it evolves, right? So, so really, it's to answer your question, I don't look upon it as, Muslim or non-Muslim, or it's anybody really who's interested. That's the way I see it. Ummah, by the way, the word ummah means womb. I think maybe like the development, and like it has to do with that. That's the root meaning of it.
I have a question about halal killings of animals. What do you think of halal, of the opposition to having the animals stunned before it's killed?
You see, you're asking the right person, because it was my grandfather who wrote, when he wrote Animals in Islam, that was the main reason, Compassionate World Farming, with Peter Roberts, that's why they told him to write the book. Because he did a research, and he said that stunning is compatible with Islam, because the animal doesn't die and the blood flows out, so there are no toxins. And because even in Islam, when you shoot an animal, the animal may not be dead, but you can go and then sever the vein, the jugular vein and whatever, and say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. So there's no problem with stunning. The problem occurred because a lot of Muslims don't understand stunning or the Quran. And then when the book was reissued, Animals in Islam, the second time, Islamic Foundation removed that chapter. They also removed the chapter on pork, because he talked about pork, what the problems are, why do Muslims not eat, the pig meat? So he had that. They removed those two chapters. So then what happened was that in 2013 I gave a talk at Harvard, and there were, in a nutshell, there were 6 scholars who said that they were very influenced by Masri's work, and it was decided that the book should be republished, which is being republished this year. And I reintroduced the stunning, and I reintroduced the pork part. And there were other issues, but I won't get into that. But anyway, so that book is coming out, and so really there's no problem with stunning. It's just that the Muslims are ignorant, and it has been proven that the pain is decreased when you stun, right? Or is eliminated, because it takes a number of seconds for the animal to become unconscious. So there is pain. So that's the reason why stunning is fine. It's a matter of education, actually.
Yeah.
And even we went to areas like that. There's no problem in Muslims being vegetarians or vegans. There's no problem whatsoever. In fact, if you could move to that would be better. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You still have 5 minutes if you want.
Yeah, just. Yeah, so the Quran is very interesting. It's opening areas like unconsciousness. What is consciousness? The hard problem of consciousness. What is it? And the Quran has some interesting statements about what that is, You know, so yeah, it's there's a lot of information in that book, actually. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't come in the beginning. We
No
were
problem.
elsewhere, but I have a question. Which SDGs do you think are, let me put it differently. For instance, does Islam have challenges as for some SDGs? Certain ones, for instance, and you think that we cannot go further? So we are stuck there, we cannot develop concepts, we cannot develop practices, and which means it's a dead end.
Yeah, you know, the thing is that, I mean, just frankly speaking, the Quranic concept does not have a concept of nationhood, actually. The Quranic idea, whether one agrees or with it or doesn't disagree, that's another matter, is the idea that we are all one, like, to be under God, under Quranic constitution, or which includes the biblical aspect minus Trinity, you know, all that stuff, right? So when you have, for example, like like one earthly civilization that is interconnected, then, for example, I contributed a chapter for Africa and her animals, where if you have like different African countries and you have problems, like how do you manage animals, because they're borders, right? So an animal could go to another country, and then how do you, but if it was like one system, or if all the African countries cooperated, then it would be better to manage, right? So what I'm saying is that I think this unification of mankind and the creation of wars, and this is causing a problem right now. So my vision would be to inculcate like a lot of aspects of the Quran, because we have done it, right? We've done it in the past. That's why we have the technology, right? This inductive knowledge. It came from the idea of the Quran saying, look into nature, look into things, right? Bradley Stephens wrote the book, Ibn al-Haytham, the first scientist. And when you look at it, he was the first scientist. There's no doubt about that, right? So the inductive knowledge came into the West, and then they excelled, and the Muslim world fell down for certain reasons, right? So like these concepts which I'm talking about, they're like universal concepts, I think, to be applied, right? Like trust in God, maintaining the equilibrium, concern for animals as communities, because we didn't know animals were in communities until the 20th century, but animals are in communities, So if you're mining or something, will you destroy a termite community? Of course, under radical capitalism, you don't care, right? You go around doing everything. So what I said in in two interviews, unfortunately, radical capitalism does not follow any of the recognitions. Then how can we have global sustainability if it doesn't follow? Like, this is the very thing it's supposed to follow to get the global sustainability. But then if you throw the idea of God out, and then you're not conscious of God, then how are you gonna? You see, this is the whole thing. There's a battle going on right now. That there's no God, forget about it, right? Whereas others say, no, there is a creator. I mean, this is what I've been hearing in this conference from the Christians, which is, it coincides with what the Muslims are saying, right? So I think that's the challenge, really.
You know what? Because sometimes we look at these SDGs in the same way we look at the instruments of human rights as universal principles.
Yeah.
And in practice, they are not universal and cannot be universal.
Yeah.
So we are stuck somewhere that, okay, it's something to be, something to happen, but it will never happen.
Yeah.
So these are excellent values, but they will never happen.
Yeah.
At the macro level.
Yeah, but then there's a verse in the Quran that says, corruption has occurred on land and sea because of what the hands of man have wrought. God has let this happen so that perhaps they might return. So when we are going to an extreme, then perhaps we may return, and God is letting it happen. And so that's the hope, anyway.
Maybe in the second life.
Yeah, the next life.
Everything will be great.
Yeah.
The idea of radical capitalism, which you just raised, seems to have been adopted in certain places, at least in the Arabic world.
Yes.
How will, or what's in your opinion, the likelihood that there will be a realization that that model is not sustainable. You see some of the development that's going on in the Arab world at least. Because the Muslim world covers a variety of cultures and societies.
Right.
But in the Middle Eastern societies, you see that radical capitalism kind of blossoming.
Oh yeah.
And is there any type of a counter movement going on there that would suggest we need to return to the more balanced approach as far as development?
I think what's going to happen is because those regimes are very authoritarian, right? You can't even say anything; you will end up dead or in some prison in the desert somewhere, right? And so I think what I think is going to happen is that like the ideas like these that myself and there are a few others who are talking about, like they'll affect hopefully the Muslim world and the young people especially, and then they may be changed then. But otherwise, I think that capitalists from the West are helping the capitalists from the East, right? They put them in power, and then that's the problem, right? And but that has to break sometime. You can't keep putting your own people in power. Like in Pakistan, there hasn't been a single leader who was not put in by the Americans. It's just a fact, right? So I mean, the Pakistanis have to blame themselves, right? Too, but until that's broken and you have people who really want to work for the society, it's very difficult. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for